Okay. Hi everyone, it's SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com. It's been ages since I've done an actual game analysis, so let's right that wrong. Let's dig into a game from the past. This game was played almost 10 years ago now, back in 2010. This is one of my games, and this was played during my Lost in the Wilderness stage, if you will, where I play, one or two chess games a year, and then not touch chess for 9 months, then that cycle just sort of kept repeating itself until eventually, what was it, about around 2015 when I got back into chess sort of full time, if you will. And what really sets this game apart, or it's kind of a boring game, but it's also an extremely logical game in that at its best, when I'm at certain stages, I really enjoy the crystal clear logic of certain positions where it's not crazy. You can see exactly what's happening. The ideas just march forward inevitably. And we're going to see that. In this game, I'm actually black. But we're going to look at it from white's perspective just to sort of see what white's facing. And just spoiler alert, again, this is basically the queen's going to exchange my move 10. It's an endgame that lasts for 40 moves. And if this isn't your cup of tea, I completely understand. But let's jump in. I'll try and make it as interesting as I can. I want to share how I find, or what I enjoy so much about these types of positions. And so the opening here, I played 2c5 as black. This is kind of, first off, everybody hates the London system, right? No one likes playing that as black. But there's also, at the time, the London system wasn't very popular. It wasn't as popular as it was now. But much more popular was the Collie system with e3 and bishop to d3. At the same time, my opponent, who I knew, he sometimes played the stone wall, which is another opening there's a lot of openings I don't like, eh? Which would be where, instead of playing with bishop f4, you would set all the pawns up like this. So imagine the pawn on e3 and imagine the pawn on f4. And sure, why not? And eventually there's going to be a big attack over here. And so I played the world's fastest c5. And I'm going to exchange pawns. I'm going to do whatever it takes to not let him get this set up. And in this particular case, he ended up playing for c4. And then we actually transposed into, I believe this is a type of Terrash defense. But for our purposes, we can just see that we've each moved our c-pawns. Position is completely symmetrical. Let's see what happens. We won't dive into the opening too much. Actually, he makes an inaccuracy here, where he plays bishop e2. It's not completely clear what else he could do. But as soon as he plays bishop e2, that lets me take the pawn, and then he moves the bishop to c4. And so the bishop ended up taking 2 turns, right, to get to a square. It could have gone to in 1 move. Perhaps white should have taken the pawn on d5 first and then moved his bishop. Or that would I believe that's the main line. Or maybe he could have played d3 and try and fianchetto this bishop and see if I would have taken, for instance, something like this, where the bishop moves in 1 move, and this bishop can go on this diagonal, say. That's a possibility for white. Instead, again, he played bishop e2, I took, he took, and then here I'm going into pure, maybe not even endgame mode, but just positional mode. I feel as if I can inflict an isolated pawn on my opponent, and if I can get a positional advantage, let's do it. So I take, and then my opponent is extremely cooperative in this regard. Far too easy. He takes with the knight. Then he takes the queen, and so we end up getting a middle game position, or an early end game, a queenless middle game, however you want to call it. However, he has the isolated pawn. And without queens, without possibilities of an attack, this is simply a weakness. There's no real dynamic strength for this position. And this is actually something I've seen, my opponent was right around 1700 online, so you can take that for what it was. I don't know what my rating was, because again, I only played a couple moves, and my counts were all provisional, so who knows how strong I was. But this is a particular mistake that I see a lot of people make, is that they don't want to take back with the pawn, because they know the isolated pawn is weak. And so they take back with the knight. But I can just exchange the knight. And it's the same thing. They don't want to take with the pawn because they know the isolated pawn is weak. And so they take with the queen. But then after we exchange queens, they're left with the isolated pawn anyway. Right? And so this is one of those examples. Again, this is usually a common theme among much weaker people who only look at, one move, maybe two moves ahead in time. It makes much more sense if we go back after he takes it. He's going to have an isolated pawn one way or the other. He might as well keep pieces on and then see if he can attack in the middle game. Instead, well, we've got the endgame version of this. But now there's something really, really important here. Well, what do you do as black? This is the main weakness. However, he could play d5. If I were to do nothing, right, he can get some d5 action. He mass exchanged everything, and he has absolutely no worries. There's no weaknesses, and in all honesty, this is a pretty boring position because it's completely symmetrical. We each have bishops. The pawn structure is symmetrical. We're both going to castle. We have equal development. What are you going to do? Extremely hard to play in this type of position. And so what we need to do, or as black, my primary aim is, he has this weakness. I want him to keep having that weakness. So that's why I played bishop b4. And then after he tried to hit my bishop back, I said, no problem, take. So now the position has changed somewhat. For one, he has the bishop pair. That's good. He doesn't have the isolated pawn anymore. So it seems like this is simply an advantage for white. And a lot of people that that allow me to go into this type of position simply think that they're doing much better. And there was a time I thought that as well. But the more I matured in chess, the more I understood that I would think I'd rather be black here. Because this pawn, it all comes down here to that guy right there, is very weak. And we can imagine that once my bishop moves, and then my rook comes over, he'd be, of course, hitting the bishop and hitting the pawn, and that's always going to be a weakness. Also notice that, positionally, he has the dark squared bishop, and he has 3 pawns, including 2 crucial center pawns, on dark squares. So my bishop is free to move, his other bishop's free to move, but this one isn't. And that really is the advantage. When you have the 2 bishop advantage, as white should have, it's these bishops, you could say, kind of cancel each other out. It's this bishop, the unopposed bishop, that needs to be the powerhouse. And if it isn't, then the 2 bishops usually aren't that big of a thing. And we're going to see that in this game. Because of the pawn structure, this bishop never actually does very much. Imagine if this pawn weren't there. The pawn were back on a2 or a4 or somewhere else, and the bishop could then slide over to a3, prevent black from castling, say. It could always go to b4 to defend, or anywhere, really. Then that'd be really good. But because the pawn is on a3, that really restricts what this bishop can do. It's going to cost him time to get it active. Now, I mean, bishop f4 is perfectly fine. Sure, why not? It's not as if this bishop is dead, but it's not as active as it potentially could be. And we're going to see it actually never comes into the game. I ended up playing b6, maybe just castling right away. Because playing b6, maybe that gives him a chance to check, maybe he can come in. But as it was, we both castled. He brought his rook over to e1, and I played bishop b7. And so we could see here that black's play, up until now, has been crystal clear logical. If we go back here, right, position is completely identical. He moves his bishop, so I'm able to exchange the pawn. I then have a chance to inflict a weakness on him, which he happily goes into the endgame, and then I make him keep that weakness. I don't give him a chance to exchange it. So I bring the knight, I pin his knight, I exchange, which might strengthen his structure, or it might weaken it. Let's take a look what the game looks like. And then I'm able to both castle, and I put my bishop, and everything is firmly controlling that important square. And so there's very little chance that he can just play d5 and get rid of his pawn, and I can likely put a pawn here. At this point, he also realizes that my threat isn't so much just go here. My concrete threat is to bring the... Frick, arrows are tough. To play rook to c8, where it both hits the bishop, and after the bishop moves, I win the pawn. So he preemptively moves his bishop out of the way, I attack the pawn, and then he defends it. Look at that bishop. Isn't it ugly? Because it is completely surrounded. It looks like a pawn. If you just look at this position too quickly, you might be mistaken for that as just a pawn. And this bishop, I don't believe it moves for the rest of the game. It's completely pinned there. Now, as mentioned, when it's the two bishop advantage, so to speak, for one side, it's this bishop that needs to be the powerhouse. It needs to be the difference maker. That also means if I could exchange his other bishop, let's just imagine those two guys vanish off the face of the earth, then he's only left with his crappy bishop. And then he doesn't have the two-bishop advantage, right? And he just has a really bad bishop. That's what I do. So I ended up playing bishop d5. He plays f3. Okay, why not? Bishop c4. Take, take. And just to really highlight, let's go back from here to here. Here to here. And see the changes in the position. Right? Essentially, we both simply lost our light squared bishop. But it's so much more than that. Like, this bishop is terrible. He's left with a crappy minor piece. His rook is on a file, sure, it does nothing. My rook is staring at a weak pawn. My knight is ready to come to the the beautiful d5 square where it's pressuring this pawn, and it's also hitting some other squares where it might be able to jump all around. My other rook can come to here, or it can come to here, and things are absolutely great. White has two semi-open files, but they both stare, well, one at his own piece, but at perfectly protected black pawns. White has nothing. White can do absolutely nothing. White is stuck defending. He was never able to do anything, really, in this game. As we'll see, he just kind of goes along for the ride for the last little bit. He tries to resist, but doesn't work very well. And this really comes back to this position back here, where he doesn't have the isolated pawn anymore. Boom, boom. And many people, they relax in this type of position because they don't realize the potential weakness that is here. Because if I can gang up on that pawn, like we do in the game, it doesn't take very long. And then I'm able to complete, the pawn can't move, neither pawn can move, they're simply sitting ducks. And so now the rest of this game is me simply applying pressure to that. I want you to, one of the reasons I really want to show white here is see how frustrating it is to play against this. Which is, I've lost enough games that are similar to this, where it seems like you can't do anything, the person is just squeezing and squeezing. And that's really my preferred way of playing. If I had to beat someone, okay, we all want to sacrifice queens and play like Morphe, that's great. But a really close second is this, where it seems like you never have a chance. Where you could play the game and not be completely sure where your mistake was. It's just that all of a sudden you realize your position sucks, and there's nothing you can do anymore. He ended up playing rook e2. I played b5, stopping him from ever playing a4. Again, if he could play... Let me back up. If he ever had a chance to play a4 or a5, maybe his rook comes alive, and again, maybe the bishop can come out to a better diagonal. So again, by playing b5, I'm just stopping that, I'm gaining space. And as we'll see, my plan later is to play with some a5 and some b5 later. We'll see that. He brings his king up. I apply even more pressure. My next move is going to be knight d5, in which I have 3 people attacking the pawn. He blunders here. He moves the rook over, which makes perfect sense. But I'm able to actually win the pawn with rook takes d4 because of the pin. He can't take back. Whoops. He also loses the pin. Like, that'd be game right immediately. So he moves over and I move back. And so you might be thinking, Smithy, why are you showing this game where he just threw away a pawn for nothing? Which is kind of true, but the overall logic of the position just keeps moving forward from here. Because now that the pawn, my plan is, it's even easier, if you will. All I need to do is exchange everything. So imagine minor piece is gone, rooks gone, other rooks gone, all the pawns gone. If everything disappears, I'm left with a 4v3 pawn endgame, which should be it should be winning. I mean, you have a pawn in a pawn game. As long as my king isn't stuck in the corner or way over here on the queen side or something, in a normal position, this should be winning. And that dictates the rest of my moves. Just this simple knowledge, this simple logic. And what can white do to stop that? He can't break through. His pieces suck. If he starts moving his pieces away from here, I'm just going to win that. You know, he tries to develop. Well, my knight comes here, again stopping him from invading on the d-file. Okay, his king's over. I start bringing my king in. He moves his rook over. We see how everything, right, is revolving. He's completely pinned down here. All of our positions, all of our forces are combined just looking at this. And so again, the win is actually, it's textbook. He can't resist, he can't move, he can't actually do anything. So all I need to do, I'll color it red, is advance my pawns. It'll apply more pressure, it's going to trade everything, and then that's game. That's pretty much exactly what happens. I play a5, but then I don't rush. There's no need to rush. Again, playing b4, it's probably winning, I'm sure it is. Let's bring my king closer. Because again, if I'm going to trade absolutely everything, well, it's going to be a king and pawn game. Let's make sure our king is in the best spot possible. He tries to shift gears, break 3. However, b4, take. He comes up here, sure, why not? Take. King and pawn endgame. Now, again, all of that follows the logic of the position, if you will. It was simply driving us towards this position. And the question is, can I win it? And what do you need to do when you're looking at the position? How can you tell? Well, what we want to do is we want to make a pass pawn, right? I'm not going to checkmate him with a pawn. I need to turn one of my pawns into a queen. Which pawn? Well, the pawn without a counterpart. So these pawns are all looking at each other, and so that means it's this guy. That is the queen maker, if you will. And so that's the only thing I really need to focus on, is how to get this pawn there. If I were to start, advancing this pawn or something, he could do something like this, where once his king comes here, all of a sudden it's not even clear if I can make progress anymore. Let's not do that. So I play e5. And then the idea, okay, he brings his king closer. I play f5. He plays g3. It doesn't really matter what he does. All I'm going to do is I need to be able to push the pawn here, and after the exchanges, and I bring my king close enough so the pawn's protected, I've got a pass pawn and I win easily. And that's exactly what happens. I bring my king up, he moves his king up, I push. Takes. We play a couple more moves. And here's where he finally resigns on move 40. It's pretty clear at this point, doesn't matter what's going to happen, I'm going to either shepherd my pawn all the way down, or I can move my king over and win his pawns. Let's look at that line, actually. So, it's white to move. Right? We'll just play it out. Yay, he's able to win this pawn, but I've got 2 of them, and it's pretty clear at this point that he's got absolutely nothing. Very easy win at this point. And so, again, if I were to say, was there anything special about this game? On the one hand, no. And on the other hand, also, no. This is about as standard and honestly about as boring as it gets. But I've always remembered this game. Part of it is because, again, it was played in that chess in the wilderness. I play chess randomly, and then this game, it stuck with me. Because it followed that clear logic that I always strive to do in my games. Just about everything I do. I'm a very logical person. I'm not sure if that comes across in my personality or my writing or my videos, but I am systematic in that approach. Part of that also is I studied logic and philosophy at school, at university, and playing games like this, it always seemed to remind me of my logic classes. And again, it's as if everything made sense. There's never a doubt. And you know what? Even if I didn't win this game, I would have been pretty darn happy, because it seemed as if I were to have followed the logic to its absolute conclusion. right? Where I gave him a weakness. And then it was just about keeping that weakness. He also maybe has a new weakness. I put my pieces on the perfectly normal squares. I then trade his only good piece, leaving him with bad pieces. I do a tactic. Yay, tactics are great. And then it's quite simple at this point. If I can trade everything, I win. And so what do? I just apply enough pressure to eventually force the mass trade. 18 trades later, it's a winning endgame. And there's something beautiful about that. Now, maybe it's only beautiful because I played it, and if I were to watch this game as knowing that it was someone else's game, I would just yawn and I would have stopped the video after about 3 minutes. But there's that logic about that. And when I talk about, increasing my endgame skills, which is one of my long-term goals in chess, it's that way I can play more games like this. So that way I can understand that hidden logic earlier in positions. Like this one's pretty obvious with isolated pawns without queens. Okay, we're just going to trade pieces, win the endgame. But how further does the rabbit hole go? How much further? When can I recognize? How soon can you recognize those telltale weaknesses in more complex positions, in which you can simply trade down and it's an effortless win? How far does it go? And a large part of me really wants to experience that. And so one of my long-term goals is to play more games like this. Even if that means eventually my YouTube channel just completely crashes because all the games are really, really boring because of these small endgame 40 moves yawners. But a very large part of me wants to play more like this. And so that will be the eventual goal. So I hope that was interesting. Why not? Put it out there, and there may be more like this to come. We'll see. If everyone hates it, then maybe not. But this is certainly where I'm going in my chess journey, is towards something like this. Anyway, so that's that. Let me know if you are comments, criticism. I'll try and do some more chess stuff. But it's hard right now. But there we go. Otherwise, let me know. Comments, criticism is always welcome. But otherwise, I'm SmithyQ from SmithyQ.com. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.